Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Liz Phillips, welcome to the Center of the Universe. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
Liz, should you describe or should I describe how we know each other?
Oh, I always love your descriptions more. So,
all right,
yeah, more life in them.
You and I worked together in Atlanta.
Yeah.
From when did you come to
go.
Atlanta? 2015, 16?
2015.
2015, and then I hightailed it out of there in 2019.
Yes.
Yes, but we probably saw each other every day, almost every day that I was down there, Monday through Thursday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Once I became, part of the team, after a while, you everyone embraced me. So
how
worked well with you all for those years.
How long did it take for you to feel embraced, Liz?
Well, maybe close to a year.
That's awful. Shame on me and everybody around me. It should have taken like 2 weeks. All right, Liz, here we go.
People embrace me faster, so.
Yeah, it shouldn't take a year. That's crazy. But we made up for lost time after that year.
That's right. That's right.
All right. So what part of the world were you born in, Liz?
Little old South Bend, Indiana.
What is South Bend, Indiana known for besides the super obvious?
Let's see. Amish country. Is that
really?
There? Mm-hmm. Like within a 30-minute radius, there are Amish populations of Amish people living everywhere in the area.
Yeah, a lot of Amish in Pennsylvania. They're actually more in Ohio. I didn't realize they were in Indiana as well.
Oh yeah, Napanee area. Lots of area, like 30 minutes west. A lot of Amish country is what they call it. And obviously, the obvious one is Notre Dame.
Yeah, the obvious is Notre Dame. So was Notre Dame basically South Bend, or was there more to South Bend than the school?
I think that it's still, Notre Dame is still mostly makes up South Bend, but there's a lot of, interesting and cool other historical things that, I probably don't find or don't appreciate as much as others who have family history there. So Studebaker that's where Studebaker was made. And so there's a Studebaker car museum, and I have, relatives that worked there years and years ago. And so, that's an interesting, but not super relevant.
No, it's fine.
In today's world.
Hey, certainly not relevant these days. The last time a Studebaker was manufactured was 45, 50 years ago, maybe?
Yeah. I think so.
Been a long time.
Yeah, but it's been a long time. So I'm trying to think if there's anything super unique, that it's known for. I just know that I have a lot of my family sort of arrived and settled there, if you will, a couple of generations. And so not sure how South Bend came to be the landing spot.
Yeah, but you're what, third generation from that part of the world?
Mm-hmm.
Where did your ancestors?
Well, I'm a little bit mixture of everything. I got a melting pot, even though my last name is Phillips. I have my grandparents on my mother's side were one was Ukrainian, the other Hungarian. On my dad's side, they were English and French, and my grandmother on my dad's side was German. So there's some interesting nationalities there. And then I'm a product of divorce, and so I've had, I had multiple parents and multiple grandparents. But on my stepmother's side of the family, that's the real, interesting and pretty exciting part of the family. They're Polish and Serbian. And so that's so got the European influence all over the place.
You're touching most of the continent, yeah.
Yeah.
Polish and Serbian. What makes them? Did you use the word exciting?
Yes, it's a very exciting combination of nationalities. And they're fiery and crazy and loving. There's just a whole. It's
Just a lot of energy.
A lot of energy. Sort of like I would imagine an Italian family or a Greek big family. If you picture my big fat Greek wedding, that's sort of how I grew up.
I described part of your family as like my big fat Greek wedding. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be accurate.
and it's a lot of people trying to be heard, and so people tend to be louder, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
I'm married to an Italian, and they're all very loud. And I'm like, it's only you and me in the room. Why are you so loud? Nobody's.
Well, your point is always going to be the most important one that people need to hear, and so you have to fight to get it out and for people to hear you. And if it's not the first or sixth time that you were able to get it out, then you just have to be louder than the other ones.
And just keep going until everybody stops talking.
Someone's going to stop talking and listen. Yes, at some point.
So what's the average when everybody gets together from that part of the family? What's the average number of people talking at the same time, typically?
Oh, easily 20 people at the same time talking.
Hold on. Are all 20 trying to get the attention of the entire place, or are they just inside conversations kind of thing?
There's always it's like, purple squirrel. There are, you're in one conversation and you are within earshot of somebody else that said something that's not true, or that's, you are right about. And so you're like all of a sudden, in that conversation while the other person's still talking to you. And, then there's got somebody that's loud and drunk and saying, no, you don't know what you're talking about, kind of thing. So,
the funny thing is memories. Rob and I were joking about this the other day, and I should let the listening audience know that Silent Rob is listening tonight. He said, I don't remember anything from our childhood, because we were talking about growing up in small town Virginia. And I said, I remember a bunch, but I'm pretty sure most of it's inaccurate. So I think that's what happens when you get older, right? And then if you're adamant that my memory is accurate, you're going to stand by it. And everybody else is like, that's absolutely not what happened.
Right. Yeah. That could be true too. Our memories are not, but you wouldn't know it by talking to the family.
Right. Because whatever is coming out of anybody's mouth is absolutely accurate to that person.
That's right.
All right. So what are your memories of being a kid in South Bend?
Swimming in the pool, playing wiffle ball in the street. My dad used to, we've always had a lot of us in the family, so there's always enough to make a team for something, and so growing up as a kid there, all my cousins were always over. We were always together. So there's 26 of us, I think, like in the my generation cousins. Now, a lot of them are way younger, but they're still cousins because they're, kids of my aunts and uncles. But, we all have kids, most of us now too. So it's kind of the same for our own children. But we grew up just spending all the summers in the pool and up at the lake and, just doing stuff together and always having fun. We had no idea that, we were poor, but we had so much fun. So just spending time together. It was always loud and fun. And you were always with somebody that was a family member. So
what did you do in the winter?
So we did a lot of sledding. Now again, a product of a divorce. So I did a lot of skiing. My stepfather and my mom, my biological mother, were skiers. And so we did a lot of winter types, outside sports like that. But then I think I loved winter back then. I loved the cold. As you grow up and have to like shovel it and drive to work in it and all those things, it's so much less, fun and exciting.
Yeah, as you get older, you have responsibilities, and those winter-related activities aren't always fun.
That's right.
When you're a kid, you can go sledding all day.
Oh yeah, we used to have those super cheap roll-up, plastic sleds that the second you fell off or stood up, the thing rolled back up and hit you in the face. That plastic, like $2
It had a very
Kroger
good sound too. I can't replicate it, but yeah, it definitely had a sound that you won't forget.
Right. But they were really lightweight, so you could carry them, trudge them right back up the hill that was super long. I remember, building a lot of snow forts in the winter.
They were slick, they were cheap, and they were just thick enough to prevent like real damage to your skin.
Right. But if you slid off and it went down the hill, you're in trouble.
Well, if there was a stiff breeze that day, you might lose the thing.
That's right.
So out of 26, do you know what number you are in terms of age?
So I'm the oldest.
Really?
Yeah. So,
Hey, Liz, you're what, 28, 29?
Sure. Yes. Times 2. No. Almost. No. I had to doing the quick math. I, never been good at quick math. Yeah, I'm the oldest. I have a cousin that's just a year, and she likes to point out to everyone that she's a year younger. And then it goes down from there.
How old is the youngest?
I think my cousins, the youngest is 22, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a good spread, but not as crazy as it could have been.
That's right.
Yeah. And I'm
the oldest of 5 on the siblings. So
how old were you when your parents divorced?
3, I think.
Oh, you barely remember that, right?
Yeah. No, right. I barely remember it. I just remember, so I think I was 3 or 4. And then when I was 5, I remember being introduced to my stepmom, who already had a daughter. So we're 2 years apart. And so that's like, I have vivid memories that I can actually visualize and remember meeting in the winter. And they how we met and like they introduced us was we were able to decorate her bay like window in the living room with that. Do you ever remember the spray on like snow? Like you could decorate the window. I don't even know if this stuff ever came off, but I remember we had so much fun trying to draw a snowman on the window with it. So
yeah, it's I'm pretty sure we had that in my house too, and yeah, it's why not? That's fun.
Yeah, but that's my sort of earlier memory.
So you're the only child of your biological parents.
Yes, I'm the only child of my biological parents.
But you pretty quickly ended up with lots of steps, siblings, and first cousins that you didn't feel like you were an only kid. It sounds like. Right,
and then both sets of parents had another child. Well, they're my dad. They had 2 more, so I have half sisters as well.
All right,
or we have one of the parents is the same.
All right, what's the difference between a step and a half?
A step is that it's like married in. Like my stepmother already had her daughter, and so we don't have the same. We don't share the same mom or dad. But a half sibling is where you share either the same mom or the same dad.
It would have taken me 10 times longer to explain that than you just did. All right, so you're 10 years old. You're in South Bend. You can do anything you want. Your parents aren't telling you what to do. You're not in school. You're not in some scheduled activity. What are you doing?
Probably sneaking a package of Oreos somewhere and like trying to watch the TV. I wasn't allowed to watch a lot of TV. So if I think back to that age, I was probably sneaking a snack, and because we weren't allowed to have a lot of sweets, and plus not having, a ton of money. As my parents didn't have like all the junk food. You had to ration it out. So that's probably super boring. But if I think back to that age, I was probably I would sneak a snack and watch one of the 7 channels we must have had on TV.
What decade are we talking about?
Well, the early 80s.
Okay. The early 80s. So when I ask you, you're 10 years old, what are you doing with your time? You're sneaking time with the TV.
MTV probably. Was that the year MTV came in the early 80s?
Yeah. MTV was probably around 82, 83, maybe. Something like no, the MTV came out in 79, 80. Yeah, so it was around that time. They were pretty.
It probably would be true. I was obsessed with MTV. I was obsessed with the music and the videos, and everything it had to offer back then.
Yeah, MTV hasn't shown a video in like 25 years.
That's what I hear. I cut the tie with cable, so I don't know. I don't have MTV now.
So you're what, Netflix, Hulu, that kind of thing?
Yeah, we're all streaming. When I moved to Atlanta in 2015, I decided to, see if I could cut the cord with cable, and I was, dangerously doing that because I had a 6-year-old who was, addicted to her shows on Nickelodeon and Disney Channel or whatever it was at the time. But I thought, well, I'm sure one of these streaming services, and it was Netflix, and then Amazon, will have, most of the shows that we want. And it turned out it was, a smart decision.
Yeah, more than enough.
I have all the streaming, things. So if you can't find a show on one streaming channel that you want to watch, it's going to be playing on the other one.
my crack research staff is informing me that MTV started in August of 81.
Okay. So yeah, I mean,
we were there. We were all
72. I'm 1972. So it would have been about 10 years old, 82.
Yeah, we're all over it. All right. So you had a normal, enjoyable childhood. Anything unique about your childhood? Unique and positive?
My mom and stepdad were dancers for Fred Astaire. They were ballroom dancers. And so
wait a minute. Do you mean the person Fred Astaire or like the company Fred Astaire?
Well, like the company, the dance company Fred Astaire. That was a Fred Astaire dance studio. They ballroom dance. Like
you're
Fred
saying
Astaire.
That like I know what you're talking about, Liz.
Fred Astaire was a ballroom dancer and lots of dances, he was on TV and movies. I don't remember which ones, but they were like the managers at the Fred Astaire dance studio, local dance studio. And this was by then, I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, about 2.5 hours north of South Bend, which is when I mostly lived with my mom and stepdad. Anyway, they were dance instructors and dancers themselves and competed with a lot of the members of the dance studio and competed all over the country in ballroom dancing. And so that was sort of where I spent my afternoons. That was, I learned all the dancing, and I eventually had a child partner, which was my babysitter's younger brother. So he was older than me still, but he became, I don't know how they talked him into it, but he was my dance partner, learned all the dances. We did lifts, and we were the only child mascots for Fred Astaire at that time, and also competed.
Did you just say child mascot?
Yeah, a child mascot for the dance studio. There weren't a lot of children doing ballroom dancing.
Got it. All right, and you were traveling too with your mom.
Yeah, wherever I don't think we went super far, but regionally probably is where we did the dance. And I did, I'm sure I was the biggest nerd back then because we did like dance. My partner and I, my babysitter's younger brother, and I did for things like talent shows and stuff at school. We did dance routines. And
are you
a million
fan
pictures
of
of me?
Are you a fan of the show Friends?
Yes.
You remember when Ross and Monica tried out for the 2 years? Was it kind of like that?
Except for better. I actually did lifts in the air. Like he lifted me, and I was, like you would see if you've ever watched a ballroom dance.
I'm not an expert.
So yeah,
but it was fun. You enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, I loved it. I've always been around music and dancing, and as a kid, I took every sort of dance. So I took tap, jazz, ballet. My mom and I took ballet together. And she was my instructor for a lot of the other dances. So that was a big deal. I did recitals and all of that. So that was a lot of fun.
It's a good thing it was a lot of fun because it sounds like you didn't have much choice since you're going there.
It took a lot of my time up, but I enjoyed it. So
yeah, no, that's awesome. When did you stop doing that? Or do you still dance today?
Oh, I wish I did. It's a lot of fun, but I guess I stopped as a teenager. My mom became ill, and so there was a lot of new responsibility as a teenager that I had to take on, and so I probably was done around 12 or 13.
Just because you had to be an adult.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Can you talk to us about what that was like?
Yeah. And so my mom and stepdad had a baby when had my sister when I was 12. And I would say, I remember having to give up my room and like be in the, most kids now, like, oh, you want to put me in the basement? Yes, I'll take a room in the basement. But, back then basements were creepy and dark and the laundry was down there. Nobody wanted to be in the basement. They weren't finished like they are today.
Right.
I think you're probably sitting in your basement, aren't you?
I am.
You have a man cave or a nice basement or something that you're.
I have a man cave, and I haven't said this in a long time on this podcast, I also have a urinal in my basement.
Oh gosh, that's amazing. Yeah, there was none of that. It was like, I was still scared to be down in the basement, at night by myself. So I had to be shoved down there, and we made the best of what was a quasi room. And so I learned to love, having my own space at some point, but my sister we're 12 years apart. So then I became the automatic babysitter. And so you can probably imagine that, I harbored some resentment as turning into a teenager. And that was my, responsibility was to watch her. But plus my poor sister Joanna when she was a baby and a toddler, was a little bit of a brat. So there was that on top of it. And now she's like the sweetest person I've ever met. But when she was a little kid, she was not. And then I would say a couple years after she was born, maybe closer to like 3 years, my mom started having issues with grasping. Like, I remember she was having trouble grasping her makeup brushes to put her makeup on. And she thought that was really weird. And then she was sort of like, I have the clumsy gene and I can trip over air, but she was not like that. And so for her to sort of just fall out of nowhere, her appendages were like, she was struggling to have control, over tripping and just walking and grasping things. So she went through a series of doctor's appointments, a whole bunch of series of misdiagnoses. And eventually, after probably a year, and I want to say maybe more like a year and a half, she ended up at Mayo Clinic in Rochester, New York. And that's where, and at first they thought she got misdiagnosed again, and they thought she had Epstein-Barr virus. At one point, they thought she had Lyme's disease because we lived in Michigan. There were a lot of deer up there, so they thought that a deer tick, could have been a culprit. And then finally, she was diagnosed with ALS, which is another, the long term is amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. It's part of the neurological disorders that is ultimately fatal, and still, let's see, she passed in 1992. So all these years later, still don't have the cure and don't have the exact cause. They've made a lot of progress, but they still don't know a whole lot about it. But when she was diagnosed, they said, you should probably get your affairs in order. So finally, when she was diagnosed, this started when I was like 13 and a half. I would say I was 15 by the time she had her diagnosis, but she was slowly, progressively getting worse. And so I took over sort of the cooking responsibility, the taking care of my sister, plus I babysat as a job. I still cut lawns when I was 12 and 13 as a job. I was, helping to bring in the money. And then, I cooked and cleaned. And by the time I finally had my driver's license, I was taking my mom to like all her appointments and all of that stuff. And so, and by then I was only able to do one sport. And so I ran track, and I did that from like the 6th grade all the way up through the end of my high school. But when, let's see, so she was diagnosed officially probably when I was 15, and they said, you probably should get your affairs in order. This is a very it's fatal and it's usually quick. And so they gave her like a year and a half to live. So we packed up and moved across the country down to Jacksonville, Florida, because my her parents and her 4 brothers lived in Jacksonville. And so if she was only going to have a certain amount of time to live, she wanted to A, be near her immediate family, and B, we probably could, I'm sure we needed to help, to help take care of her and do things that maybe I couldn't do when I was in school and those sort of things. So we moved to Jacksonville, and, I don't know if you've ever, I don't know that you've had to, sort of be ripped from everything you've known in terms of, friends I grew up with and went to school with since kindergarten. And, that's all I knew, is that small town between South Bend and Grand Rapids. And so not only was I leaving that, I was leaving my school, I was leaving being close to my other part of the family on my dad's side, and all my cousins and stuff. So I moved as a rising sophomore, I guess. And so I went to, I finished, or maybe it was actually in the middle of our year. And so I finished my 10th grade year there and, went through high school. And my mom actually progressed slower. I think she had an extreme will to live. She really wanted to see me graduate and to be there as long as she could for my younger sibling as well. And she was super young. So she was 33 when she was diagnosed.
Wow.
Yeah. And so for her, it's like, well, I haven't lived yet. I've only lived a tiny bit, and I'm not ready to go. So I think that her sheer will helped her live beyond what they thought, they diagnosed her for. And she actually lived 5 years. And so she passed when I was 20.
5 years from the diagnosis.
From the diagnosis. Yeah.
Yeah. You were only 20. Your sister was only 8.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like your teenage years were mostly like being an adult who had a lot more responsibility than most 25-year-olds have.
That's right. But I was juggling a lot. And I honestly know that that's how it shaped me into who I am today. I have a fairly high, I don't always react appropriately, but I have a fairly high tolerance for stress, and I can handle many, many things that come at me. And so it's probably why I think I'm good at my job.
It's a blessing and a curse, right?
It really is. Yeah. But I tell you, I've known so many people in my life who have made a point to say that to me. Like, I don't know how I guess I just don't think that things are that stressful. So maybe I have a different view because I remember what stress was really like, as a child, and having that sort of immense responsibility, and also knowing that your parent was ultimately going to pass. I don't know. To me, that part was probably a blessing for my future life, and how what lens I used to decipher whether things are so stressful I can't, function or not, So.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned I talking about your mom and what your teenage years were like. It's impossible for me to segue to any other topic smoothly, and so that was my awkward attempt at doing that. You mentioned track. What kind of track events are we talking about?
So you wouldn't know it now by looking at me, but I
don't know what you're talking about, Liz.
I used to be a sprinter and a hurdler. And so I ran the 110 and the 440 hurdles. And so I ran short and long distance hurdles. I ran in relays. So the 880 relay in the mile, the little bit longer one. And I also did the 440 relay when they needed me to participate. So I was in Jacksonville, Florida. And, when I was in junior high, and I was probably, I don't know if I was one of the fastest, but I think I was just driven to try to do something that I felt like it meant something. And so like breaking records, those sorts of things, I was always striving to do that. I didn't really know what I was doing. It's not like I grew up with a family of runners or anything. I never ran. I don't like to run now as an adult either, but that was a different kind of running. It was to hopefully to win a race. So it was competitive. It was always a challenge for me to get better and better and sort of understand my stride and my body enough to be able to get over all of those hurdles in quick fashion without knocking them over, or, worse, hurting myself, severely. I was sort of afraid of the hurdles. And so I had this because as you're running up on them and you have to lift the right leg, you have to have all the steps down. So I think it's not as easy as, they make it look on TV when you watch the Olympics, and they're just gliding over those hurdles.
Well, they're gliding, and I imagine it comes from a lot of practice, and from a physiological perspective, they were just born to run hurdles.
That's right. But yeah, so I did that. I think we had the opportunity to join, a sport in my elementary 6th grade. And back then it wasn't part of the junior high. So I started then, and I just really loved it. And so I tried long jump. I tried all the events and track. I didn't like that one as much. I probably couldn't jump very far, even though I was tall for my age. And then tried the pole vault. I just never could figure that out. So I guess I landed on the sprint and the hurdles. And I did that all the way up through my senior year. And I thought I was invited we went to the Bob Hayes Invitational. Bob Hayes was a big, runner name down in Florida. And it was a huge invitational, and that could have probably solidified maybe any opportunity for college, for getting some sort of scholarship. But I hurt myself. I sort of had this, the biggest fear that I had was all about falling and injuring myself to where I couldn't, run. And I did that. And at the very end, I had to be carried off the track because I fractured my foot, and so you kind of need your feet to be running over those hurdles.
Go ahead. Bring Alina in. Let's see Alina. It's got to be Alina, right?
You can? Sorry.
That's okay. Does Alina want to be on camera?
No. she's going to bed.
Does she have any idea what you're doing right now?
Yeah, I told her that I was talking to doing a podcast and talking to you.
You told her it was with me, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
She was like, "Oh, that's really cool. Wait, so what kind of interview? What? I'm like, well, because I said, like an interview on a podcast."
Yeah, I don't know what I call this, but yeah, it's just two people talking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, I hurt myself, and then I was really toward, it was the rest of my season was done. And so the problem was for me, I had this thought that I was going to go off to college and have, be on a scholarship and be able to get to college that way. Because my parents really didn't have a ton of money, and I would work, and I had this sort of in my head, but I think just the responsibilities were just weighing down or overwhelming for me. And the closer that we got to my mother passing, it was like they had a need for me to be there and help her with her. She needed help with everything, so bathing, her physical therapy. So I did all of that, all the not so fun stuff about someone being ill. So I had all those responsibilities, and I think, I was sort of trying to escape my life at that point, and met at the time it was my boyfriend, and I ended up getting married at a super young age. So the trajectory, of what I had thought I was going to do shifted, but I think I've always been fairly good at, pivoting and then just figuring out how to make the best of what situation I was in. So I did not run track in college.
Well, super young age. How old were you when you got married?
18.
Yeah, that's looking back at it, that's super, super young.
Yeah, and I don't advise it. I mean, there are lots of people who are high school sweethearts that marry and are, married 50 years later, and I think that's amazing. But at 18, you really don't know who you are or who you want to really be. Not every. I didn't. I thought I did, but I obviously didn't. I hadn't come into my own yet, so that was probably. But again, another life experience that really shapes who you are. As an adult.
So most 18-year-olds are looking to get into the workforce, which I imagine you did, which we can come back to, or they're thinking about going to college. And you got married, and you're basically one of the primary caregivers for your mom. So yeah, college right away was not in the cards for you.
Well, I decided to go to night school, to go to college in the evening. And okay. I went to the local community college because they offered evening classes. And back then I thought I wanted to be an IT programmer, if you can imagine that. I was fascinated by technology. So, and I always have been a little bit of a tech geek, but really? I thought I could code. And back then it was like Fortran and, other languages. And then I realized you have to be good at math, and you also don't really, I didn't know, again, I wasn't coming into my own yet. I didn't know that people was where my passion was going to be. And, as I started taking these programming classes, I was like, well, where's the people? You're just kind of sitting behind a desk by yourself writing code, and I can't figure this out. This is the wrong career. I didn't have any guidance counselor telling me what I should be doing. But I was lucky. So I worked full time. I was a wife, and I was, a homemaker with just the two of us, and then took care of my mom and my sister, and made sure that she was safe and okay. But then, I was hired by a temp agency right out of college, or right out of high school, like 3 months out of high school. And I went to work for a big corporation, for AT&T at the time. And it was AT&T, American Transtech. And it was a divestiture company from the big, Ma Bell companies. And most of the people there had come down from New Jersey and basically started this, this office. But I worked in their benefits department, and more specifically their employee stock option, their ESOP department. And I had no idea what I was doing. But as time went on, I learned that I loved, dealing with benefits and learning about them and helping people. And so that sort of, I guess I kind of fell into doing HR work at an early stage of my career.
And you liked every bit of it? Every bit of the HR experience?
I mean, I did, yeah.
And so benefits and stock plans and that sort of thing grew into this broad love of all things human resources. That's
right. And then I had some great, great mentors that brought me along and helped me and made sure that I was taking, the right courses. And eventually I, shifted the type of courses I was taking. And then just with my job opportunities, I had an opportunity in almost every company to travel around the U.S. And so that's great for a 20-something-year-old that, has no responsibilities at that point. I was, let's back up for a second because I got divorced at 21. And so,
there's a key fact. Yeah.
There's a key fact. And so then I was, sort of rising star in the company and, in my field and traveling and just learning about people. And, I had the opportunity to live in Denver and Chicago and, other places. And so I just soaked it all in and just loved every bit of it. And, being around people and helping people. And I guess I was good at dealing with people's problems because you do that in HR.
Yeah. I mean, you're part counselor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What's the favorite place you lived?
Oh, goodness. I'm a beach lover, so I'm pretty partial to warmer climates and beach life, but I really loved living in Denver. Gosh, I loved living in Chicago too. So it's kind of hard to say, but they're for different reasons. I am attracted to the water. It's my happy place, but in Denver, which there's not a lot of water, I grew up a skier, as I said before, and outside and outdoor, life. And so I took full advantage of what that city had to offer. I mean, the hiking, the skiing, there was a great nightlife. They had, the Rockies, the baseball team, and as well as they have mountains, and they had the Broncos, and I think when I moved there, they were getting ready for their three-peat, and so it was.
You were there in the late 90s.
Yeah. 98, 99, 2000. So it was such an exciting time to be there. And there was just so much to do. Red Rocks, all the concerts, music outside. It was just such a beautiful place.
It's my impression, I've never really spent any time in Colorado. My impression is it's a pretty laid back kind of place too.
Very laid back. The people were unbelievably friendly everywhere I went. It was just it didn't feel like there was a lot of stress, in the people that lived around there, and they just everybody loves, if you live there, you love the outdoors. You probably don't live there otherwise, because you're taking full advantage.
How many different cities have you lived in since you were divorced?
I lived in South Bend again. I've lived in Jacksonville off and on 3 times. So I've moved back there 3 times and only moved away, basically because of my job. And the final time I moved away from Jacksonville in, I guess it was early 2009, was after my daughter was born. And for me to be closer to family. So I moved back to South Bend. So I lived, I don't know, since I was divorced, probably 6 different cities.
Okay. Yeah. That's a lot. I've really lived in like one place most of my life.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's how most of my family is. I think that, I have family members who have never, they've traveled outside of South Bend because other various work or, I have a lot of big bowlers in our family. So a lot of bowling tournaments and that kind of thing. And, golfers, and that they've left the city, for those reasons, but never spent any good bit of time outside of South Bend. And so some of them, I don't think can imagine like living so far from family. But I've always lived far from family and just visited. And so it's just normal to me.
Yeah, there's something about travel and getting a diverse set of experiences that you would never get if you just stayed within 30 miles of where you were born or grew up.
Yeah, and I have a lot of differences between myself and my family, just because of those experiences and just the adventure of it all and the diversity of living in different kinds of cities is things that it has to offer. I'm a big foodie. I always have loved different styles of food, and that's not something that the bulk of my family maybe appreciates because we're a meat and potatoes people. So growing in the Midwest is what you eat.
What's typical fare in the Midwest?
Sausage and potatoes, or pot roast and potatoes, or steak for lunch. Ribeye steak on the grill. My mom makes the best ribeye steaks. But what's funny is, that's normal, like fare for everyday eating. And when I lived in Florida, I ate like I said, I'm a foodie, but I almost always ate mostly seafood, because it's literally caught down the street, and so the restaurants always had the freshest seafood. And when I was pregnant with my daughter, my parents came down about 3 weeks early and stayed with me, and we were eating, and I was still going to work up until a week before I had Alina, so my daughter. And so my mom was there, and one of my best girlfriends and her husband lived next door.
You're saying mom. You're technically your stepmom.
Yeah, technically my stepmom. I've called her mom for many, many, many years, and we've always been very, very close, even when my biological mother was alive. So when my mom was down visiting to be there for the birth of my daughter, I was at work, and she was sort of, bored, and my dad was golfing. And so she would hang out with my girlfriend down there and offer to make, lunch. So they would go for a walk on the beach and get some exercise. And she would say, do you want a hamburger or do you want a steak, for lunch? And my friends, are used to eating protein bars and Cheez-Its, for lunch and that. and they were like, a steak for lunch? What are you talking about?
It's Tuesday.
Oh, sorry. My power I've been having an interesting day with some power blips. I don't know what's causing it, but it's going to come back on in a moment. So
you're still connected with me, so we're good.
I'm still connected, so it's super strange. Anyway, so yeah, it was that's funny. So that is a common fare for everyday eating is red meat upon more red meat. And as a vegetable, you get a potato of some sort in some fashion. And
were there any green vegetables in play?
No. No, and my daughter jokes because she's got a pretty nice palate as well, and loves all kinds of foods. But her favorites are Brussels sprouts, broccoli, green beans. Those are her probably go-to vegetables. And my family believes corn is the vegetable, and so it's like potatoes, corn, some sort of bread.
Lots of starch and carbs.
You really can't do the keto diet in this kind of family. But so yeah, she often jokes and she's like, where are the green beans? Like, can we have a green vegetable with this meal?
Just not a thing.
Yeah.
All right. So Alina, and we're going to come back and talk more about Alina, but because we're talking about living in various places, when she's out on her own at some point and you can go work and or live where you want, where do you end up?
So I think my next move is back to Florida, but I'd love to live on the other coast on the Gulf side. So I had told my parents a few years back that was going to be my plan. At the point that I'm ready to retire or sooner, depending on what the situation was, that I wanted to be in the Tampa, Bradenton, Sarasota area. I think it's beautiful. I have a ton of friends there. My friends are spread out all over Florida. And, it'd be a great place to retire. And so my parents, my mom specifically jumped on the opportunity to take a look at where she could have a winter place down in that area, knowing that eventually I would, come back to the area. So they took advantage of the market a couple years ago now and, bought a condo down in Terra Golf Course down there in Bradenton. Beautiful. The whole area is just so beautiful. And they're both like living their best, lives, wintering down in Florida and golfing every day while they're down there.
Oh, so they still winter there and summer back in Indiana?
That's right. In South Bend. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My mom, can't be away that long from the grandbabies. So from the grandkids. And so it's hard enough, although she's, she loves it. And my dad is a big time golfer. So he, he's definitely living his best retirement and golfing every day.
Yeah. Good for him.
Yeah. So that's probably the area that I will end up back in at some point.
It's funny. My wife has always said she wants to keep going south. And I said, that's fine. But we have two kids in high school. She said, yeah, once we're ready to move somewhere else, we're going to Florida. And I said, that's fine. I'd also like to explore Texas. She goes, no, Florida. And so we're going to end up in Florida somewhere. And I said, well, my favorite football team is the Buccaneers. So
that's right. I know that. Yeah.
If we went to Tampa.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to do. And there's beaches everywhere. And so you don't have to necessarily be at the beach, but you can still be close to the beach. My parents are 30 minutes from Clearwater Beach. And so, I think that it's a great metro area to be in long term. There's sports, there's food, there's, beach. It's all there in the warm climate.
And it doesn't snow.
And it does not snow like it did here this last weekend in Atlanta. So.
Right. Which when that happens in Atlanta, everything stops, right?
Yeah. I was actually at my daughter's volleyball tournament. It was a 3-day qualifying tournament. So we really didn't see the light of day because I was, I wanted to get ahead of any potential weather and slowdowns in Atlanta. And I just booked the hotel, that was attached to the convention center so that we just didn't have to worry about it.
Yeah, because Snowmageddon It happened back in, I guess, the winter of 14, 15.
14, yes, because it was right the year before I moved there. Yeah, I heard all about it.
Yeah, people were stuck on the interstates there, 85 and 75 and probably 20 for like more than 24 hours.
Yeah, it's I mean, some of the stories are very heartbreaking and sad, but there was a lot of good, not good fortune, but goodwill. I think that, people that were complete strangers, offered help and offered for people to stay in their homes. And I've heard all kinds of stories from people that whose spouses or family, were out on that highway stuck and really couldn't get anywhere.
Yeah.
Even by foot, if you're just in shoes, like people don't wear boots here. So it's not like you're prepared for cold weather.
Yeah. Some people were probably wearing flip-flops stuck in those cars.
Maybe. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That actually
so it's still a little too cold for me here. This is not my ideal climate.
It's elevated there, right? The elevation is 1,500 feet above sea level, something like that there. And you're not far from the North Georgia mountains.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That Snowmageddon thing that happened in Atlanta back in 2015, I think, that happened here in Northern Virginia. Same thing. People were stuck for more than 24 hours and literally you just couldn't move and you couldn't get the equipment to the site to clean up the original accident that bottled everything up. It was
right.
Not, yeah.
There was a lot of guidance to stay off the road if you didn't have to be out, even though it wasn't as bad as what, originally predicted. It still was like, it's safer to just not go anywhere. And it was the weekend. So hopefully that helped people, but it was better just to stay off the road because people don't know how to drive here in any kind of adverse weather conditions, including a few sprinkles of rain.
Rain messes up Atlanta traffic. It's unbelievable.
So imagine what ice and snow does.
I mean, and we're not talking about a driving rain that is causing like hydroplaning or it's just raining.
Yeah. When I walk out in the morning and see if it looks like, how you can tell the sky, it's like, oh, it's going to rain today, or if it's coming. I just cringe because I'm like, this morning commute is going to be rough.
All right.
Everybody's a transplant. So they all have driving, abilities from other towns and everyone's super aggressive, especially sort of, I know we're not post-COVID, but post the people staying at home as much. It's people have road rage like I've never seen in Atlanta.
Yeah, but there are just enough people from Atlanta that aren't great drivers that don't.
That might be true. Also,
I've had people on an interstate where the speed limit's 70 going through downtown Atlanta just stop, and there's nothing in front of them. They just stop. Doesn't make any sense to me. Yeah. All right, so let's talk about Alina. I think you were telling me before we started recording she turned 13 a couple of months ago. Tell me the story of Alina.
Sure. Well, let's see. I thought when I was young, really young, that I always wanted to be a young mom. Like I had two young moms, a mom and my stepmom, both young, super, so that meant that they were super fun. They rode all the roller coasters with us as kids. They, did all the fun things. And I remember my biological mom was my, what did they call it? Like my parent room mom or room parent or something, whatever they used to call it back then. Yeah. And so she was always the one she ran my Bluebirds and my Brownies and my Girl Scout troop. She always did all that fun stuff. So I was like, oh, I have got to be a young mom because that's just what it takes. I had two amazing young moms. So as I got older and realized, I don't even know if I would make a good mom, but being a young mom might not be in the cards because as time was going on, I was already divorced and wasn't really, not necessarily prospect for having a baby and being remarried. So I thought, okay, well, it's just not going to happen. I'm certainly not going to be a young mom. And as more time went on, I thought, well, maybe I'm not going to have the opportunity at all. And, we'll have to cross that bridge when I get to it. But I had to start thinking longer term about what happens if I don't ever have a baby. maybe I need to be thinking about adoption or, some alternative. And so I, got to be in my upper 30s, and it, long story short, I ended up pregnant. And I was honestly thrilled, scared and thrilled all at the same time, because I was starting to get worried that maybe I wouldn't, have the opportunity to be a mom. And so when I learned I was going to be one, I was, freaked out, scared, all the things that a lot of women go through, even though it's something you've been dreaming of, for many years. And so I was just super excited, and was probably the healthiest I've been in years and years and years when I was pregnant with her. So I was like, I'm going to eat so healthy. And I did. I mean, I was great. The only thing I couldn't help eating because of cravings was jalapenos. And so it's probably a terrible thing to eat for a baby. But I went through my entire pregnancy eating something with jalapenos almost every day, even though I was mostly eating healthy.
What was the craziest thing you combined with jalapenos while you were pregnant?
Fruit. Super weird and
that sounds awful.
It sounds awful to me now. Yes, but
name
I was
name the fruit. Name the fruit.
Watermelon. I would have watermelon with sliced jalapenos all the time.
You might as well throw mayonnaise on top of that to make it.
It's so gross, right? Oh, I know, right? I don't know. And to this day, she doesn't have a spicy palate, although like many kids, she eats those Taki chips that are like a spicy Mexican chip that has spicy powder on it. And so she'll eat a whole bag of those if I let her.
And now
anyway,
go ahead.
So she was she was fully baked for like 40 weeks, and I was actually, I think, a week late after that. And so when my parents, like I had said earlier, came down to stay with me for a few weeks for her to be born and to help me out, we had one last sort of, like, the week leading into her birth, I was trying to do everything I could. I'm like, let's go to Ruth's Chris for dinner. I can't imagine the next time I'm going to get out for a nice dinner. I'm going to have a glass of wine. They say that helps induce your labor. I was going through all whatever the myths were and the things that people said, you needed to do to be able to get the labor going. And so we were going to have one final sort of happy hour at a friend's house. And my parents were going to go and everyone was going to get together. And I'm like, I won't be seeing like my friends in this capacity for some time. So I was supposed to make an appetizer for this, get together at a friend's house. And I had this terrible headache that I couldn't shake for about 2 days. And so my mom was like, you probably need to go to the doctor. Normally if you weren't pregnant, I wouldn't probably think anything of it, but just to be safe. And so I did. I remember it was a Friday afternoon. And I went there and I hadn't even I was, cleaning and doing stuff around the house. So I hadn't even gotten ready or anything. And the nurse said, go ahead and get, settled in because you're going to be having a baby tonight or you're soon. And I was like, well, but I have a appetizer sitting on the counter I'm supposed to be making for a party tonight, and it wasn't like I guess my brain wouldn't let it sink in that I was not going back home and I was actually going to have a baby. So I had a pretty easy and short overall labor and delivery. And she was born the next morning at 5:25 in the morning, healthy and happy.
Was the headache a signal that it was time for?
Yeah, so it was a blood pressure issue for me, and it was a signal. And so they didn't want to take the chance of the baby's blood pressure dropping. And so she was like, get comfortable, and all I could think of was, I have to make that appetizer. I got a party to go to.
Because it was going to be the last one for a while, right?
Yeah, it was. And so then I remember texting, in a group text about, okay, so I guess I'm staying here. Can someone bring me my bag, that I had pre-packed and everything? And you guys go ahead and go to the happy hour at our friends because the lady said it could be hours. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm like, the nurse is saying this could be hours. So go have your party. I'll keep you posted, and that's just, I've always been sort of on my own and very independent in a lot of ways. And so I didn't think anything of it where my friends were like, don't you want us to come there? Like, this is back when you could be in the hospital with your friends that were having our family that were having a baby. I said, just go do the party. I'll keep you, posted. I'm sure I can text you later. And so I did. Around 10 o'clock, around 9:30, I guess that night, I had texted my parents and the group and said, look, supposedly it's going to be, sometime between now and tomorrow, maybe my parents should come up here. And the whole gang came to the hospital. Remember, this is a beach hospital. It's not like a big city hospital, and they let them all come in. But the problem was they had been drinking and they decided to bring their miniatures. And so they were, my buddy Jeff, I'll never forget, I have pictures of him like peeking under the sheet at the bottom of the bed and holding his, his miniature bottle of vodka up and stealing my ice chips so he could make a cocktail.
So by the way, what you're describing is what the rest of the country thinks of Florida.
Yeah, I know. And these friends are all transplants also into Florida. Like these are all mostly Ohio people. Yeah. And but yeah, yes, they had a few cocktails, and so they were having fun and being super loud. And so finally the nurse was like, y'all are gonna have to pipe down or get out. Like other people are in here trying to have a baby and you guys are so loud in this room. So they were all sad, but it's very par for the course.
They can turn almost anything into a good time.
That's right. Stealing my ice chips.
What's Alina up to these days?
So she is a volleyball player. And so she is fully in with both feet. And so I am that mom who drives, she's in travel volleyball, club volleyball, plays for school too. So I'm the mom that's driving all over this crazy city and all over the region, and traveling to different places to cheer her on and watch her. I love watching her. And I love watching her progression and just getting better and better every year. And she's 5'7", so she's getting pretty tall for her age. And hopefully, we both hope she continues to grow because that only bodes well for you if you are a volleyball player. So that's the bulk of. That takes a ton of time. It's both of our time. Practice 3 or 4 days a week, extra training, tournaments. So we're fully on, but we both love it. So.
She's your daughter, and she's been your best bud for the last 13 years, right?
That's right. Yeah, I'm a single mom. Just always been the two of us, and so I always believed, and it's true with us too, that a single parent generally has a very unique relationship. It's their only child, and there's not another parent, so they're the two of you sort of build this bond that's probably very different from parents that have multiple children. And so it's been very special. She's super sweetheart, biggest heart on a planet, a rule follower, right now. Let's hope that stays.
Yeah, she just became a teenager. Let's
she did become a teenager, but she is afraid of me, I think. And so I try to maintain a very unique relationship, but there's also definitely a delineation that I'm not your best friend. I'm your parent, and I'm always going to be saying the things I need to say to you, and teaching you lessons and looking out for you. And just know that if anything ever happens, my mama bear claws will be fully out, and I got your back.
Yeah, you're friends, but there are times where you have to be mom.
Absolutely. Yeah.
All right. Can you name the other 25 cousins out of the 26 where you're the oldest? Am I putting you on the spot?
Oh, geez. Yes, you're
All
putting me
right,
on the
are
spot.
they going to listen to this?
You might be. You said, am I going to tell my family?
All right, I won't put. You've been put on the spot. Now you're off the spot.
Yeah, because I'm having my bourbon. Come on.
Yeah, that's an unfair question. You are drinking a little bourbon, and maybe that's why I asked the question, because I'm also drinking a little bourbon. All right,
If I had to, I could name them. Yeah.
Liz, do you want to tell the story of Tom Greco and the tortilla chips? I don't think I've ever heard this from your perspective. I always tell it from my perspective.
I have to think about that for a second to remember the chain of events.
While you think about it, Gene Burke says hi.
Ah, hello, Gene Burke. I hope he is doing tremendous.
He still says
to use his words.
He still says it.
Where were we?
We were at the Mexican place. I don't know what part of town we were in. We were like a mile from my hotel.
Oh yeah, in La Paria.
Yes.
I don't know if I remember all the context.
Do you want me to start and then you take
please do, and then I'll chime in. I just know it's already making me laugh.
Yeah, because it's funny. So Tom Greco, which he was episode Silent Rob could correct me here, episode 4 or 5 on this podcast.
Yeah, he's
a very funny dude. One of the reasons he's funny is he's like 5'2" and weighs like 270 pounds. I affectionately refer to him as a human bowling ball. Well, Tom, we're sitting down to eat, and I'm next to, I can't remember the guy I was next to, but Tom was directly across from me in the booth, and you were next to Tom.
Yeah.
And so you're diagonally off to my right. Tom is eating the chips, the tortilla chips, like he's being
with a fury.
Like he's being paid $1 per chip eaten, kind of thing.
With passion.
He's got both hands going. He's become a tortilla chip eating machine.
Yes.
And he's not talking because he's eating, and the rest of us are having a conversation about whatever. And then I realized that Tom has had part of a chip stuck in his airway. And I know most humans. You want to take it over from here?
No, just keep going. You're the best storyteller.
So Tom is in slight distress. I realize that the average human can probably last a couple of minutes without being able to breathe. So I'm going to let this play out. Instead of reacting right away, I'm just going to see what happens for the first few seconds. I obviously don't want my buddy to die or be in harm's way in any real way. But it probably felt like 20 seconds, but it's probably more like 5 or 6 seconds. And I don't know if you and the other person realized what was going on at that moment. But at some point before I said the next thing, you realized he was struggling.
Right.
And I think you told me later you were thinking about pushing him out of the booth and giving the Heimlich, because you're looking at me like, what is Paul's problem? Why is he not moving? He's the closest to being able to get to Tom easily. Why is he not moving right now? And as you're, I think, thinking I'm the biggest jerk in the world, I look at Tom and I said, Tom, would it help if I slapped you? And then you look at me with the biggest, like, serious motherly face. You're like, that won't help.
That's not going to help.
And Tom laughs at this exchange, and that's what dislodged the chip. One of my favorite stories. Oh, man.
What a good laugh. And I mean, and I'm luckily, because he wasn't he didn't choke to death.
I think his airway was only partially obstructed. At least that's what I'm going to tell the world.
Yeah, that's right. We want that on record, that he was partially obstructed and not actually choking.
Oh,
and us laughing about it. But, the very cliche saying that laughter is the best medicine, I am a wholehearted believer of that. And I have been very fortunate to have a lot of good laughs with a lot of work colleagues, and you included, that just will for years allow me, great memories.
I think you could take Tom, you, me, and a couple other folks from our former company together, and we would be laughing most waking hours.
I mean, I'm still waiting on the call for the reality show. on the road. So one
Yeah,
day when we're all retired, maybe we should do that.
If I had more guts, I would have done it years ago. I just don't have the guts. All right, Liz, here's a fun question. And you've listened to a few of our episodes. I don't know that you've listened to the ones where we say, hey, you're going to be a talk show host, whether it's daytime or night talk show.
Okay.
Have you heard this question?
No, this one I haven't.
Oh, so you've listened to some of the older ones.
Yeah.
Where we ask do you want to be a comedian or join the military when you're 25 kind of thing.
Yeah.
So now our question is, you're a talk show host. It's your first night. You want your first night or first day to be really big. You get to invite 3 guests on. 1 female guest, 1 male guest, 1 musical group or musical soloist. And if you want to add a 4th guest, you can add a comedian if you want to, if comedy's your thing. They could be alive or dead. Like for this talk show, we can bring people back. It can be for your entertainment, the world's entertainment. It can be thought-provoking. It can be whatever you want it to be. Who are your 3 or 4 guests?
And they don't have to be celebrities, right?
It can be anybody. It can be famous, not famous.
Oh boy, I haven't heard this question, so I'm definitely not prepared.
Well, it's meant to be revealing, and I can just talk while you think if you want to give you a little more
time. So let's see. Let's start with a musical guest. I've always loved all genres of music, but I think one of my favorite artists growing up, and probably to this day still, is Stevie Wonder. And I've loved his music for many, many decades and would love to have him on my show, I guess, not only to interview, but playing throughout the show.
He's your musical guest, and you would talk to him as well. Yep.
Yeah, I think so. I think he's got a lot of fascinating aspects to his life. And has obviously overcome multiple challenges and been very successful. So there's probably, one guest. I would probably invite my buddy, Jeff Moore, who is probably one of my all-time favorite people. He's your forever bachelor that can get along with everyone he's ever met. He's a salesman, so he's a forever charmer and is just funny and can make any situation funny. This is the guy that, stole my ice chips to make a cocktail.
Same guy.
At my bedside. And no matter where I go with him, and we do a lot of travels as groups, together, vacations and that kind of stuff, it's always going to be a laugh. And so even though it would be my show, I would have this feeling of he's a safety net that could help me if I was struggling on my first night of my talk show by adding some crazily inappropriate comment or question.
You're being very practical. I like it.
Well, I want my show to be success.
Sure.
And he typically, is like I said, a charmer, and people always find him funny. So, you got to it's like surrounding yourself at work with the people that are smarter than you. That's kind of how I look at it. Let's see, my 3rd guest, I guess. I don't, this is going to be maybe shallow sounding, I don't know what the right adjective is, but I've never been oh my gosh, I've always wanted to meet this historic figure and ask questions, or I'm not a huge celebrity swooner. So I don't really know. It
can be literally anybody. But I think we're left with a female guest, so the guest should be female.
Oh, female guest. Okay.
Unless Jeff was your comedian, Liz.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I would probably want to have someone gosh, now I'm going to embarrass myself by not knowing her name. Like a female CEO, like gosh, I can't think of her name. The CEO of Spanx.
I don't know her name, but I know who you're talking about.
Oh my gosh.
Sure.
I cannot think of her name.
My crack research staff will check it out.
Yeah. So someone like her, where she, just a super creative, inventive product that we talk about millions and millions of women need, and maybe men too. it is a super innovative product, and she has had much success. And so someone like that, a CEO of a company that sort of started with this idea.
My crack research staff is saying Sarah Blakely.
Sarah Blakely, yes. Yes, it was just escaped me completely. But
and she seems like a good person too, right?
Yeah. So just a still down to earth and very successful, and just you'd love to be able to, interview her and have her on the show.
Yeah, great person to be around too, sounds like.
So.
Not really a fan of comedians, Liz?
No, I love comedians.
Who's your favorite comedian? Who would you have on as a comedian?
Like clean, like PG, or does it matter?
No, whatever. I guess we're going late night if you're going to go not so clean.
Yeah.
Maybe we're going to HBO.
So kind of dorky. Like I like Ray Romano.
Ray Romano's hilarious.
Yeah. So I'd love to have him on my show.
Oh, who wouldn't want to have Ray come over and have dinner and just shoot the shit? Yeah, I mean, he'd be great.
Yeah. I was a huge fan of his series for many years, and just I've seen his stand-up, so I think he's hilarious.
No, I could listen to that guy talk for hours. Yeah, so I haven't met your friend Jeff, but the rest of your guests I'm familiar with, and it sounds like a great show.
It would be fun.
Liz, over the next few years, what does your life look like? Working, raising your daughter, and then hopefully she gets on to the next thing?
Yeah, hopefully she gets on to college. So I have for the last 5 years, probably 4 years, been obsessed with the tiny home movement. And I am in progress right now building my tiny house on wheels. And
are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, no, I'm not kidding.
Yeah, oh my gosh, we need to talk more, Liz.
Yes, I know. My dream of putting my, dream home in a 400 to 500 square foot home that could be not towed by me, but towed to wherever I want to live. That is where my next venture is. I am looking to actually purchase land down in the Bradenton area, a little bit more inland, Myakka City kind of area near Bradenton, so that I have been scoping out land for the last year and a half or 2 years to hopefully build a small tiny home community.
You're going to build a community?
Mm-hmm. And that is going to be my next chapter in life, is running that and having it, having community and having like-minded people, be able to do both long-term and short-term stays on my property.
So you would have static foundations and mobile tiny homes. Yeah.
So I would build the infrastructure, needed for, my goal is between like a dozen to 2 dozen, homes eventually. But it takes a lot of work to get the zoning and everything done. And so I've been doing, I can't tell you how many years of research, but that's my goal for my sort of next chapter post corporate life.
What is it about tiny homes?
It's a smaller footprint. It's a time freedom. It allows for time freedom, financial freedom. If you have your tiny home built and you pay cash for that, you don't have a mortgage anymore. And the tiny homes are built. I just don't need a giant home. And I'm as a single person, I don't enjoy maintaining everything you have to do, taking 4 hours to cut your lawn. And, a lot of people love doing that kind of stuff. I would rather put that time, in travel and visiting family and deciding on a whim that we want to pick up and go, somewhere for a week or a weekend, and not worry about, okay, well, it's time to clean the gutters, and I've got some huge problem in my home, and I've dealt with all of that. And I just love the idea and the notion of, after decades of being sort of generationally someone that is a pack rat, or collecting stuff. The stuff is not what's important at all. And as long as you have the things that, bring you the most joy, that's all you need in your home. For me, I love cooking I want to have a focal point in my house, and I'm building it around the kitchen. And so I'm in the design phase still, and super excited. And my daughter's been on board the whole time. It's something that we've decided to do together. So,
but are you thinking about moving to Florida soon?
And I don't think soon is the word, but probably it could be in the next, it could be before she's done with high school, but probably not. It'll probably be, but I am going to have that tiny house here in Atlanta.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So we're going to live in it while we're still here.
Yeah. I think I have two issues with a tiny home. Well, maybe three. I'm a big dude, but I could probably make it work. I don't think my wife would like being that close to me as I'm snoring. That's problem two. And problem three, I don't know that tiny homes are conducive to urinals.
You can do almost anything you want in your tiny home. But here's the other piece of it. And this is why probably Florida will be, a good place to live. It forces you to, right? Because the space is smaller. The idea is to kind of force you to be outside with nature. And so rather than, necessarily dealing with home maintenance, I would much rather spend that time developing a nice garden or having a pool, like a community pool. And I'm a big fan of people, and I like the community living, where you share meals and you share, life stories and you share fun times and those sorts of things. So,
Liz, I think it's fantastic. I love your idea.
Yeah. And so I think having that is, prudent financially, because I want to have that long-term, revenue or income coming in post-retirement, and just to be able to enjoy it.
Yeah. I think you're going to be a huge success doing that. I think it's great.
Thanks. I hope so. I think it can work as long as I can get, and maybe in the next 5 years, the zoning will change, because the laws continue to change, and Florida is a little bit more tiny friendly than like this state is, than Georgia and some other states. They're a lot more progressive with rewriting the code. It's just they don't know what to do with it, because if you can't make money off of it, it might be difficult to approve.
Yeah.
They have to figure out how the city makes money.
Yeah, how they're going to tax 24 tiny home lots.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, Liz, I appreciate you doing this. We tried to get together, and we had this notion that you would be in Virginia at some point. We could do this in person.
Know.
We can still do that, but I'm glad you were able to join tonight. I'm really enjoyed learning more about you. Some of what you talked about, we had talked about before, but a lot of what we talked about, I didn't know about you. So I'm glad we did this.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm honored to be on your show. And I wish you much success.
Thank you very much, Liz.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.